I'm at a place in my life where I can just objectively appreciate my parents, their struggles.
He was Hollywood royalty with eyes that could stop time, but behind the blue gaze and golden smile, Paul Newman carried a secret. And now, decades later, his own daughter is breaking the silence. From untold family pain to a legacy hanging by a thread, this is the story Paul Newman never wanted the world to hear.
It was almost as wonderful as when my father looked at me and said to my husband and I, "You've broken the cycle of bad parenting."
Paul Newman wasn't just a handsome face on the big screen. He was one of Hollywood's most respected actors. His career was filled with hits: Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, The Verdict. He played outlaws, underdogs, and flawed heroes with the same steady intensity. And even when he aged out of traditional leading man roles, he stayed relevant, picking strong characters over flashy fame. But Newman's impact wasn't limited to movies. Off-screen, he was just as determined to make a difference. In the 1980s, he launched a food brand starting with a homemade salad dressing that he gave to friends. When it hit store shelves, every penny of profit went to charity. Over the years, the brand expanded into pasta sauces, cookies, lemonade, and more. His idea was simple: sell good food and use the money to help people. That down-to-earth mission raised hundreds of millions for children, education, and health programs. He also co-founded camps for children with serious illnesses, giving them a chance to feel like kids again. For Newman, it wasn't about building an empire, it was about giving back. But while the world applauded, few saw the cracks beneath the charm, and fewer still knew the storm brewing behind closed doors. One of Paul's daughters, Nell Newman, didn't just inherit his values, she ran with them. Passionate about the environment and organic living, Nell helped start Newman's Own Organics. It was a bold move. Long before organic food was mainstream, she pushed for healthier, eco-friendly choices. Her branch of the brand made everything from pretzels to pet food, all with the same promise: profits go to charity. To the people, Nell and her dad looked like a powerful team. They even posed on product labels in a playful take on the classic American Gothic painting, pitchfork and all. That image became symbolic not just of a family business, but of shared purpose. But behind the scenes, things started to shift. In the mid-2010s, Nell was quietly removed from the brand. Her company was absorbed into the larger Newman's Own operation, and just like that, her name disappeared from the labels. No drama, no press release, just silence. People who had watched the father-daughter duo build something special were left wondering, why was she pushed out? The daughter who once stood proudly beside her father on every label suddenly vanished. What happened to Nell Newman, and why did the family empire begin to fracture? After Paul died, things got messy. He had carefully planned his will, but the way those plans were carried out left his family feeling blindsided. Control of the company and foundation didn't go to his children. Instead, key decisions were handed to a close advisor, someone outside the family. That move sparked quiet tension at first, but over time it grew louder. One of Paul's daughters, Susan, went public with her frustration. She claimed the family had been cut out and that her father's wishes were being misinterpreted or ignored. She wasn't looking for a payout, she just wanted transparency and a seat at the table. But the legal structure made that nearly impossible. Paul's will had a no-contest clause, meaning anyone who challenged it risked losing everything. It was a protective move intended to avoid ugly legal fights, but in practice, it silenced his own children. They couldn't question the decisions being made without risking what little control they had left. For years, the family watched from the sidelines as the legacy they helped build moved in a direction they never signed off on. The mission was still about charity, but the heart, the original family connection, felt like it was slipping away. The man who preached generosity left behind a legacy of control and a family who could do little but watch as outsiders took the wheel.
So Melissa Newman, known as Lissy, is the middle daughter of Paul and Joanne Woodward. She wrote the foreword to her father's memoir, The Extraordinary Life of an Ordinary Man, and with her sisters helped compile the transcripts that became the memoir. She is an American artist, teacher, singer, and former actress.
While the world fixated on courtrooms and headlines, one of Paul Newman's daughters quietly opened up a different kind of story, one made of memories, not drama. Melissa Newman chose to honor her parents not through conflict, but through pages filled with emotion, nostalgia, and love. In her photo book, Head Over Heels, Melissa didn't try to defend her father or rewrite his legacy. She simply let their life speak for itself. Through a series of personal, candid photos and quiet reflections, she shared the version of Paul Newman most people never saw. Not the movie star, not the businessman, just Dad. The images tell their own story. Paul reading in the living room, holding his wife's hand at dinner, laughing with his children during quiet afternoons. There's nothing flashy about them. And that's the point. The book shows a side of Paul that wasn't designed for the cameras. His softness, his patience, and the way he loved his family in private. There's a particular weight in the way Melissa frames her parents' relationship. She doesn't sugarcoat their complexity, but the tenderness is undeniable. Her mother, Joanne Woodward, is ever present, smiling, aging, loving. Their connection, even in silence or weariness, feels deep and lasting. The book became a kind of emotional time capsule. While legal fights stirred up bitterness, Melissa's collection offered something warmer, a reminder that legacies are made not just in headlines, but in quiet kitchens, half-read books, and long looks between two people who still saw each other after decades. But as the legal battles raged, one daughter chose a different path, opening a photo album instead of a lawsuit, and what she revealed rewrote everything we thought we knew about her father.
I'm really sad that my dad wasn't able to sort it out a lot sooner because, he was already having an affair with my mother.
Even with all his charm and success, Paul Newman carried a pain that never quite left him, the loss of his son, Scott. It wasn't just grief, it was guilt, the kind that lingers, the kind that changes how a father sees himself forever. Scott struggled with addiction, and when he passed away, it shook Paul to his core. He admitted later in life that he hadn't always been the most present father. There was always another movie, another event, another distraction. And by the time he realized how far the distance had grown, it was too late to close it. Instead of burying that regret, Paul tried to turn it into something meaningful. He wanted to help others avoid the same heartbreak, but even with those efforts, the pain never really went away. You could see it in his eyes during interviews, hear it in the pauses when he spoke about his kids. It stayed with him, quiet, constant. The death of his son softened him. It made him reflect more, speak less, and lean harder into his role as a father to his other children. Still, the sadness clung to him like a shadow, not something he talked about often, but always there. Fame made him a legend, grief made him human, and guilt left a silence louder than applause. In the final years of his life, Paul Newman began to pull away from the spotlight. He spent more time at home, more time thinking, and eventually he started talking not to the press, but to his family. He opened up in quiet, honest moments about the mistakes he made, the pressure he felt to live up to his own image, the relationships that suffered while he built a public persona that never quite matched the man underneath. Limit to holding back emotionally, to leaning on alcohol more than he should have, and to sometimes putting ambition before connection. These weren't dramatic revelations, they were quiet truths, spoken late at night, shared in passing, or confessed in the hush of a hospital room. His children, especially his daughters, listened. Some found peace in what he said. Others were left with more questions. But at least finally he was speaking. Paul Newman didn't want to die with lies on his chest, so he let go of the image, and in those last moments he became something even more compelling than a legend. He became real, and as the curtain closed, Paul Newman, the actor, the father, spoke the truth he'd hidden for decades. His daughter was listening, and now, so are we.
There is trauma, there is such a thing, and some of the trauma was, trauma light, and some of it was really, really heavy stuff.
After years of keeping quiet and dealing with legal stuff, Paul Newman's daughters decided it was time to step up, not for the money, but for what their dad really wanted. The foundation he created wasn't just about making cash, it was about making a difference. Paul wanted every dollar from his brand to go towards helping kids, supporting families, and uplifting communities. But somewhere along the way, that mission got a bit lost. Robert Forrester, who was supposed to carry on Paul's charitable vision, ended up in the middle of some drama. Over time, decisions started happening without the family's say-so, programs changed, and the transparency that used to be a hallmark of Newman's own began to disappear. So the family decided to speak up, not out of anger, but out of concern. Eventually, they got Forrester out of the leadership role. It wasn't an instant fix, and it didn't solve everything, but it was a step in the right direction. The daughters began working behind the scenes to bring the company back to what their dad dad cared about most: giving back. Not about branding or corporate growth, just helping people. They've been pushing for more accountability, more family involvement, and a return to their dad's original mission. It's been tough. The legal stuff is still complicated, and they don't have full control yet, but they're making steady progress. They're not just protecting a brand, they're keeping a promise, a vision their dad hoped would live on. This fight isn't just about money, it's about memory. And Paul Newman's daughters aren't letting that memory fade without a struggle. Paul Newman was admired by so many fans, peers, and generations, but sometimes that admiration can cloud the truth. Behind those blue eyes and that famous smile was a guy dealing with guilt, grief, and a quiet need for redemption. He was generous, but also a bit guarded. He built something great, but left behind a family still trying to figure out how to carry it on. His public image is all about success and kindness, but his private life, it's a lot more complicated and human. Through it all, his daughters have stuck around. Some fought back, some shared stories, and some opened up photo albums instead of lawsuits. Together, they've worked to tell a fuller story, one that celebrates the good while acknowledging the flaws. They didn't just inherit a legacy, they took on the responsibility of keeping it real. Behind every legend is a truth waiting to be uncovered. And thanks to the voices he left behind, Paul Newman's real story is finally coming to light.